Hi guys, it's me Quinn, and as always, if you appreciate my content, consider hitting the like button. It's the only way the YouTube algorithm really notices me.
Do that. It's a good video. Don't do that for me. This is a bad video.
Recently, I had the pleasure of reading what is likely the most terrifying science fiction book series I've ever read. I've always enjoyed scary stories. As a kid, I read anthologies like Goosebumps or Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. But I didn't know true fear until I encountered the works of Stephen King and H.P. Lovecraft in my teenage years. Lovecraft's work opened up such terrifying vistas of thought that I would, while reading them, become transfixed and filled with ultimate existential dread. The
I haven't read much Lovecraft. I haven't really read any Stephen King. There's people that will crucify me for that, but I definitely think I'm definitely interested by Lovecraft, the mythos, the ideas, but Great Man Theory, the kill your heroes, all that. He wrote some interesting books, had interesting ideas, and was kind of a racist and had problems, problematic.
cosmic terrors he wrote about in his stories struck me as somehow realer than the monsters and ghosts of Goosebumps, and that is probably because Lovecraft, in truth, being the flawed man he was expressing a very simple fear: the fear of the unknown. And what is more unknown than the blackness of space? I must admit that not since my early teenage years have I felt such poignant terror while reading as I did when first encountering the work of Lovecraft.
I hate that. The person looking at the demons, the existential thing that's just like, I'm gonna have to kill myself instead of whatever this is going to do. Ugh.
That is, until I read the Remembrance of Earth's Past trilogy. There are 3 books in this series.
Humanity's painful future. Yes, there is not much in here that makes me feel good and think like, yeah, we're gonna do it. We're gonna have such beautiful sights. It more makes me think that any beautiful sights are probably uh, us hurling towards some stupid cliff. And, not that we'd ever be flying by the seat of our pants towards something really bad and just kind of ignore it. Anyway.
The Three-Body Problem, The Dark Forest, and Death's Send. There is also an additional book, not written by Sixton Law himself, called Redemption of Time. The first book in the series, The Three-Body Problem, starts off as a mystery. As the story unfolds, it starts to feel as though we are reading the unfolding of some grand conspiracy. A conspiracy written into the fabric of the universe itself. Early on in the story, you find out that scientists around the world have been killing themselves. A note left behind by one of the late scientists, Yang Dong, ominously adds to the mysteries, saying only, "All the evidence points to a single conclusion. Physics has never existed and will never exist. I know what I'm doing is irresponsible, but I have no choice." We base so much of our own perception of what we...
Such a good quote. And yeah, if you thought that you knew something that could unravel everything, if you thought maybe you could prove Jesus wasn't real, you could prove some great truth, should you? You think truth is always better than lies. But what if it's so terrible that you know you yourself, you're going to kill yourself? So do you even want to let chance anyone knowing? But you have to leave behind something. I know what I'm doing is irresponsible.
Considered to be reality on what we can observe. We look upon the universe and extrapolate from that point. But what if we will never be able to know the truth about the universe? What if the universal constants are not constant? What if the laws of physics are not laws? What if reality isn't real? Before we get any further into the video, I have to give a spoiler warning. If you have not read this series, I highly recommend you stop this video and do so.
Hearing about the, like, scientists killing themselves because they couldn't prove physics was real because of alien fuckery, that was enough to hook me. I can't remember the order in which I heard things about it, but that was certainly a big one. Just, what would you do? It's literally, I can't believe no? Maybe I don't have to look it up. Was it Foucault? I might just be saying names. Person talking about being tormented by a demon and how would I think, therefore I am. Yeah, let me look that one up.
If you've read the series or just don't,
We're gonna learn too. René Descartes. Discourse on the Method. Radical doubt. Oh yeah, that idea rejects plausible. Philosophical skepticism is a family of philosophical views that question the possibility of knowledge. It differs from other forms of skepticism in that it even rejects very plausible knowledgeable claims that belong to basic common sense. Philosophical skeptics are often classified into two general members. Those who deny all possibility of knowledge, and those who advocate for suspension of judgment due to inadequacy of evidence. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to digest it. See if I can regurgitate it in a new way. So you have the radical skeptics, some of whom say that you can't even know anything because you have to use your flawed senses to know things. Goldman in the New In philosophy, a class of these, akata is incomprehensibleness, or the impossibility of comprehending or conceiving a thing. It is the antithesis of the Stoic doctrine of catalepsis. According to Stoics, catalepsis was true perception. But to the Theoronics and academic skeptics, no perception could. Okay, I'm sorry. Going down a hole. Edit that out later.
Don't care about spoilers, then continue forth. Now, we won't be getting into all of the details of this series, but I will be giving context on why exactly I think it's so unnerving.
Oh, point being, even if you think that you can't prove physics is real and that you've actually gone crazy into La La Land, just keep going. Just be Alice in Wonderland, I guess. Just keep going. Unless you have to redact it. Anyway.
Ultimately, the secret of the first book is this: we are not alone in the universe. We are not alone in the Milky Way. Just 4 light years from our own solar system lives another species. They have heard the call of Earth from the vacuum of space, and because their own world is unstable, in a constant state of varying extremes.
Okay, real quick. The call from Earth. We are always sending out messages to space, and there's been scientists saying that we shouldn't. I think, like, Stephen Hawking. Don't worry. This time I'm gonna new window over here. Stephen Hawking thinks making contact with aliens would be a very bad idea indeed. Why these scientists fear contact with space aliens, from NBC News. Yeah. People are worried about it. And maybe they're right to be. But how do we know anything about the universe without, to use an analogy of our civilization, humanity being an infant civilization, crying out and learning what we can? I guess, well, we'll get to what the 3-body problem says we should do.
Due to the 3 suns.
Foreshadowing is a popular technique.
Structure of their solar system, they have chosen Earth as their new home. They intend to exterminate the human race, like bugs. Though their technology is great, due to the great distance of space, it will take the aliens, named the Trisolarians, 400 years to arrive on Earth. But in the meantime, through technology involving quantum entanglement, they were able to stifle the progress of human scientific development. Scientific theories based on humanity's current understanding of physics were rendered useless. The Trisolarians had led humankind into a trap, and the trap had snapped closed, leaving humanity as a helpless victim, only capable of waiting until the predator arrived to claim its prey. Everything that humankind did was monitored in real time by the Trisolarians as their fleet made its way from their homeworld to the world of Earth.
Okay, so the humans were monitored forever by the Sophons, the particle-sized supercomputers that the Earth was. Well, at first there were like a couple on Earth, if I'm remembering correctly. By the way, this is going to get very vague at times. I don't have the best memory. That's part of why I'm watching this video, to refresh my mind as I go over the book. But the Sophons were interesting. Of course, having humanity be completely open technologically isn't a wholly new idea. But having it be so imperceptible, so hidden in the way that the Sophons were, them being just these tiny particle-sized supercomputers, it was really interesting and a threat that you couldn't actually interact with. So, in a weird way, they thought, well, I can't be hurt by it exactly. But they were a constant danger.
Nothing could be concealed from them save the thoughts hidden away within the individual human minds. For a while, the world struggles to adjust, attempting to find solutions. It was briefly considered that a portion of the human species might be sent off into the vacuum of space on generational ships. Escapism would have had three potential goals. The first option would be finding a new world among the stars where humanity could survive. This would have been the most ideal option. The next option would be a starship civilization, its citizens aboard an eternal voyage. The third option would have been for humanity to take temporary refuge among the stars. They would hope to return after Trisolaris had settled in the solar system and attempt to coexist with the aliens. But escapism could never truly happen, not because humanity's technology couldn't potentially reach the level sufficient enough to allow it, but because human nature would prevent it from ever getting off the ground. It is simply a matter of who is allowed to leave, and who is condemned to face the wrath of the Trisolarans on Earth.
I think that this gets too cut and dry by the book. They say, oh, everyone's going to want to go. Because that'll mean survival. I think, well, for one, I think it'll be a lot more iffy on how well that mission's going to go. And I guess part of that is how much resources you pour into it. If you say we're making a small mission to save a portion of humanity that could maybe be saved through cloning or something like that, that's one thing. Saying we're going to save the whole civilization, or we're going to save a whole chunk of civilization, it gets trickier. It can't be envied, I guess. I don't think the lives of the people on the ships would necessarily be ones of luxury like we're imagining. Yeah, I just don't think that they're entirely correct on this. It's too black and white. I don't think that everyone's gonna want to go as well.
no matter who got to leave, whether they be elite or poor, humankind's fundamental value system would ultimately collapse, for the idea of equality would be utterly shattered. Human rights and equality have deep roots. Inequality of survival is the worst sort of inequality, and the people and countries left behind will never just sit and wait for death while others have a way out. There will be increasingly extreme confrontations between the two sides until there's world chaos, and then no one goes. The United Nations.
Oop. Let's go back just a bit to that quote. Inequality of survival is the worst sort of inequality. Yeah. Saying that some countries won't just sit and wait for death while others have a way out. But even then, it's not like, so say America's sending some people. Are they going to send all of America? If that is what they're saying, then maybe, yes, there is a problem here. And that, I guess it has to be a global effort. Or else, yeah, maybe Russia would launch nukes on someone trying to take off with a colony ship of Americans, of almost all the Americans. I feel like my lighting's bad. That's what learning's for. Okay. There will be increasingly extreme confrontations between the two sides until there's world chaos, and then no one goes. That's in the Dark Forest, second book. So, this is the big idea behind escapism, which gets rejected several times by humanity throughout the book series. And I'm not sure that the series itself condemns escapism, because it's a very pessimistic view overall. So in some ways, maybe it's saying, sure, go ahead and escape if you can, but there's no way humanity will be able to. I think it could work if there's some mission. I don't know, we have the ISS, but at the same time, Russia's pulling out of that right now. But at the same time, they're doing it slowly, so it's tough to say. Be interesting to have a conversation about it in the comments. There's going to be a lot of calls to that, so probably mention what specifically you want to talk about.
The United Nations, realizing this simple fact, overwhelmingly voted to ban escapism, instead choosing to focus on what they could do from Earth to thwart the Trisolarians, including the formation of a space force.
Space Force. Alright.
Even with everything the world leaders attempted in order to maintain stability, eventually society did collapse in an apocalyptic testing event known as the Great Ravine.
The Great Ravine gets foreshadowed a couple of times. Well, not foreshadowed. It gets mentioned before it's really explained. Like, oh, the Great Ravine, the Great Ravine. Yeah, and then the Great Ravine. It's harrowing. It's a great famine, fighting. At one point, they talk about people marching down the road or down the highway towards another city, and someone falls and the other people around him stop to eat them on the spot, like, because everyone's starving to death. Harrowing. Awful. A dark series at times, definitely. I think I found Waldo down in the corner there. Let me right here. Anyway. But I wish I feel like we should have had some scenes from the Great Ravine, or maybe like some letters, or something that was firsthand. Maybe that a character could find or experience. That was a firsthand account. Instead, it's all very separated. Maybe the author felt like it was too graphic to get into. That could be a fair choice, to skim over things like that.
During the Great Ravine, the Space Force was brought to the brink of collapse. Inflation skyrocketed, credit systems unraveled. It started with the slow economic transformation that often accompanied wartime.
Inflation. That's it. Inflation. Just inflation, war, defense spending. Once again, the U.S. spends the most on defense. We don't need to. We have tanks sitting in the desert doing nothing. Granted, we should have some in reserve, but we don't need more. The army doesn't want more. Sorry.
The standard of living declined, and the political climate grew more and more intense. But instead of it just being one or a few countries, it was the entire Earth. Society was on edge, and if you said something wrong, they would say you were ETO, or a traitor to humanity. So nobody felt safe, and film and television from the Golden Age began to be restricted, and then was banned worldwide.
Okay. Now, ETO. I wish I could. Earth Trisolaris Organizer. I can't remember exactly what it is. Sorry. But basically that you're a human aligning yourself with the Trisolarans. And I don't know. Like, we talk about cancel culture and stuff. And I don't think cancel culture is going to, like, morph into this. But we're maybe building the same tools that people will use to try and oppress people, to say that you're I'm not quite sure what I'm trying to say with this. But, and if you said something wrong, they would say ETO or a traitor to humanity. So nobody felt safe. It just echoes some of that conservative whining. But I know that this is taking it seriously, that, like, people didn't feel safe, that everyone was worried about being, you know, labeled a conspirator with the Trisolarans if they were critical of what was going on with the military. Or what the Space Force was doing, I'm guessing. Film and television from the Golden Age began to be restricted. Then was banned worldwide. I don't know. So, restricted. Maybe not shown to children. Like, oh, we don't want them to be... we don't want to poison their minds with images of the past that they're not going to get to live. I could maybe see that being some future argument. That, like, showing people the good times will lead to them just being more hateful of the present. But we've always been nostalgic for the past. I don't think that climate change or any of the other numerous disasters waiting to befall us are going to change that. Once again, from the Dark Forest. So, that was probably the better written book out of the three, I think. But I liked the characters of Death's End more, I would say.
But eventually, things got even worse. Humanity began to starve. Climate change had already been greatly accelerating. With the coming of the Trisolaran crisis, humanity grew pessimistic. Even if they saved the Earth, made it into Eden come again, it would be an Eden for the Trisolarans, not them. Only the Space Force was given thought, and its continued development only further polluted the Earth. So climate change accelerated. The environment changed. The temperature raised. Forest and plains became desert. The process of desertification had not been subtle or gradual. The green of the earth had eroded simultaneously like a damp towel left out to dry in the sun. Food production halted, for there was no grain being grown. And for the next 50 years, the planet was famished.
Now, this felt a little looking towards the future. Especially with the problems that we're seeing with water. Water's a big issue, especially in some of the desert areas. Utah. Nevada. California. Droughts. I'm just running around my base. Not even really thinking. Yeah. A lot of talk about, well, the talk that there was of the Great Ravine was about the famine. And how people were just deprived by the governments. That everything was getting funneled towards the Space Forces. And, like I said, climate change gets accelerated. It all gets worse. So, yeah, that part of the book really, I guess that's why I wanted them to dig more into it, was I felt like there was a lot there to be said, a lot to show. But humanity... Oh, spoilers for the whole series? I'm gonna put that somewhere. Anyway, spoiler for the whole series. They eventually decide that the right thing to do is to take care of people, even if it means that they might lose to the Trisolarans, that it'll be worth it to take care of people instead of grinding humanity down just for maybe surviving, and what's left will be this wretched thing. Which that was the philosophy that I started to agree with the most, which was to live. And he says here about not making the world into an Eden for the Trisolarans. And I get that, but you still have to imagine that you're going to live on the world that you will win. But I can see how they couldn't imagine a way to do that without their industry. Industry was the only thing they thought they had.
The population of the Earth decreased by 5 billion during those years, all while the Trisolaran fleet marched on steadily. One of the most intriguing things about these books, mainly the second book, The Dark Forest, is how they show the effect that the imminent Trisolaran invasion has on humanity before the aliens even arrive within the solar system. Initially, many people denied that the invasion was truly real. Once the truth became widely accepted, a sense of dread crept over all mankind.
The thing that really secured it for people was, in fact, a telescope that had been put into space, getting footage of the trail from the Trisolaran fleet going through a cloud, a space cloud. Seeing that trail, they were like, that's them. That's proof of it. Proof that this armada is coming. And that was like confirmation. That was like finally it for a lot of people. They were like, this is real.
Religions had to change to make way for the existence of extraterrestrials. Humanity could no longer hide behind the comforting fantasy of our own uniqueness. We were not unique. We were one of the potentially endless civilizations out there in the dark. The scariest part of this book series, in my opinion, is also in the second book, The Dark Forest. In this book, we begin to unravel the truth about the state of life in the universe. The book calls us to consider cosmic sociology. If you supposed that a vast amount of civilizations were distributed throughout the universe based on the number of detectable stars, those civilizations would make up the body of cosmic sociology. Cosmic sociology is based on two axioms. First, survival is the primary need of civilization. Second, civilization continuously grows and expands, but the total number of matter in the universe remains constant. These two axioms are all that is needed to extrapolate the ultimate horrifying truth about cosmic society. It is a secret that the Trisolarans themselves knew, and called the most important secret in the universe. It was the secret that the universe itself was a dark forest.
There it is. Okay. The Dark Forest. The concept itself is fascinating. Those axioms, it makes sense. I love the way it's presented and the dawning horror of it for the characters in the books. Each of them, the few of them that realize it, one of them comes to the realization right before getting frozen in cryo sleep and isn't able to tell anyone. Another character can't tell anyone for different reasons. But those axioms, it makes sense. I'm just not sure. So, but does a civilization have to expand? What about a zero-growth civilization? You clone enough to continue your population, but why do you need more if your production needs are met? I feel like it's too small thinking, or that every civilization would expand in the same way. If it sounds like I'm picking apart the concepts, it's not because I don't like them. It's not because I didn't find them really interesting to think on. I'm picking them apart because I want to be more hopeful than what the book presents.
The universe is a dark forest. Every civilization an armed hunter stalking through the trees like a ghost, gently pushing aside branches that block the path and trying to tread without sound. Even breathing is done with care. The hunter has to be careful because everywhere in the forest are stealthy hunters like him. If he finds other life, another hunter, an angel or a demon, a delicate infant or a tottering old man, a fairy or a demigod, there is only one thing he can do: open fire and eliminate them. In this forest, hell is other people, an eternal threat that any life that exposes its own existence will be swiftly wiped out. This is the picture of cosmic civilization. It's the explanation for the Fermi paradox.
Okay. Once again, this quote. The universe is a dark forest. It really makes you feel alone and kind of scared. When he talks about if he finds another life, another hunter, an angel or demon, a delicate infant or a tottering old man, we would absolutely be the infant. We send out our signals. We're just looking for someone to talk to. An intellect greater than ours that comes along could easily fool us, outthink us in ways that we perhaps couldn't imagine. I don't know. But in this forest, hell is other people. Reminds me of another quote that was in the book. I don't know if it'll be in this video or not. About astronomers knowing that heaven doesn't reside in the sky. Hell is in the stars above because of how hostile space is. It's dark and it's far. And we're far from anything. If you feel close to the moon, it's a lot smaller than most things, and it's still real far away. The universe is a dark forest. Every civilization is an armed hunter. Humanity is a delicate infant. All they can do is open fire and eliminate them. Hell is other people. Any life that exposes its own existence will be swiftly wiped out. It's the explanation for the Fermi paradox. The Fermi paradox is the answer, or the question, if life is so spontaneous and possible in the universe, and the universe is so old and it's been going on for so long, where is everybody? Shouldn't we see signs of other civilizations? Shouldn't we receive transmissions from them like we would try to send to them? They should be more powerful than us. Couldn't we get their transmissions then? Why can't they get them to us? Or is it a dark forest? It's something that I'm going to probably think on for maybe the rest of my life. I appreciate this book for that. It points out how difficult cosmic civilization would be.
The famous Fermi paradox, of course, brings up the quandary. If based on what we know about the universe, it should be full of life, then where is said life? Why is the universe seemingly silent? This series provides a single terrifying answer. We don't see them because they are hiding. Like all life on Earth, life in the universe must compete to survive. It is a cruel fact about the nature of life itself. If the location of a world is revealed, it is marked in a way. A metaphorical spotlight is shown upon it, a blinking sign stating, "There is intelligent life here. Destroy it before it destroys you." Eventually the mark will be noticed. It is only a matter of time. It doesn't matter what motivated someone to leave the mark. What's important is that the dead hand has stretched the nerves of the dark forest to the breaking point, and it's the most sensitive nerve that's most liable to make a move. Suppose there are 1 million hunters in the forest. The number of civilizations on the billions upon billions of stars in the Milky Way could be thousands of times that. Perhaps 900,000 of them will disregard the marking. Of the remaining 100,000, maybe 99,000 of them will probe the location, and after confirming that it has no life, disregard it. But one of the remaining 10,000 hunters will surely make the choice to fire on that position. Because for civilizations at a certain level of technological development, attacking may be safer and less of a hassle than probing. If there's really nothing at that location, then there's no loss. The idea that the universe could be a dark forest strikes fear into my very core. Humans have always seemed to be fascinated with the idea of extraterrestrial life, making contact. For more than 100 years, we have blasted the sky with signals, sending pieces of our world out onto the cosmos in the form of waves, never thinking about exactly who might be listening. Though humans have revealed themselves to the Trisolarans, who...
Oh. My bad. But, yeah, firing on the target anyway. Like, if someone says, hey, let's say you're in a war zone, or well, I guess you're supposed to be in the dark forest, but let's do something more imaginable for people, maybe. Do you want to go out, maybe have to put yourself in the open, reveal yourself, to investigate, see what's going on? Maybe it's just a crying child. Maybe it's a crying child you could help because you feel really bad. Or maybe it's something that makes the sound of a crying child, and it's just waiting for you to get close. It's a dark forest. You can't trust anything.
Though humans have revealed themselves to the Trisolarans, who only wanted to colonize the Earth for themselves, there were things far worse and far more powerful than the Trisolarans. Ancient civilizations were shielded in the dark and armed with the power to rip apart dimensions. Another fascinating and also quite troubling concept Sixenlul forces us to consider in his books is the potential effect that life has had upon the universe itself. Without life, the Earth would be a different planet. There would be no oceans, no rivers. The entire surface of the planet would be as dry as Mars. Life is not some tiny shell clinging to the surface of the world, fragile waiting to be snuffed out in an instant. Life, with the aid of time, is powerful enough to move mountains. And without life,
with the aid of time. Part of the issue with climate change is that it's accelerating that time. We're not talking about normal Earth-scale time, so it's going to be an extinction event. That's... Anyway. Yes, this idea, the effect that life has had on the universe. What do you think? I'd like to imagine that it would be positive, that life would, if it can't spread out and live amongst the stars and form great galactic civilizations and all that, I'd like to imagine that we build nice things that last for a while and then we fade away. And I think I could live with that. I think I could live with that.
it is very possible that by what we now consider to be the modern era, liquid water would not exist on planet Earth. Plants, animals, and bacteria all have had important roles in the present composition of our atmosphere. Without life, the atmosphere would be very different. It's possible that such an atmosphere would not be able to shield the surface of the Earth against solar winds and ultraviolet rays. And the oceans would evaporate. Soon, greenhouse effects would turn the Earth's atmosphere into a copy of Venus's, and then water vapor would be lost to space over time. After several billion years, the Earth would be dry. The Earth that we and all other life on this planet inhabit is ultimately a home constructed by life for itself. If we take this idea and apply it to the universe itself, then this thought occurs. If life has had such a drastic effect on the Earth, then what effect has life as a whole had on the universe itself? And what would the universe look like without life? If life was exceedingly rare in the universe, its impact on the evolution of the cosmos could be ignored. But if the universe was in fact teeming with life, as the famous Drake equation suggests, then a terrifying question arises. How much has the universe from its original state been altered by life? Is the nature that we experience natural at all? A terrifying revelation comes near the end of the final book in the series, Death's End. The universe had once been 10-dimensional, a state of perfection, but due to the destructive nature of life itself, those dimensions have collapsed, and the universe will continue to collapse until only a single dimension remained. Countless ancient civilizations potentially possess the capability of initiating dimension collapses in parts of the universe. It was one of the methods that hunters in the Dark Forest used to eliminate other intelligent species. The problem was that once a dimension strike occurred, it never ended. The universe itself was dying, drying up in patchwork formation as the Earth had done during the Great Ravine. The endless cosmic darkness that we saw as the universe today had been the result of the endless battles of the Dark Forest, and we as humans would never know the true beauty and perfection of the original cosmos.
So, part of the question is, how old is the universe? Which scientists are working on. I know I can Google and get a number that I'll probably forget. But how much has it changed? We think we can map out how we think everything wound up. Okay. But what's the shape? What's the design? How many habitable planets? How many were made habitable? I don't know. Science fiction at its best.
Aside from pure existential dread, this series has so many great science fiction ideas that I just love, such as the idea of cryogenics. The philosophy behind people being willing to freeze themselves in the present in order to wake up in the future is based on a very human but often not true assumption.
If you do not like people freezing themselves, you will hate this series. They send, it's referred to several times as like sending people to the future, sending reinforcements to the future. It's an interesting way to do things. I'd do it. Although part of it is like everyone you know will be older and maybe dead by the time you wake up. But that's life.
That the future will somehow be better than now. Many of the characters throughout this book series experience being frozen and unthawed in a different era. I find it fascinating to read about how someone from a specific era interacts with the world and the people of a new era. This idea is also at the heart of one of my all-time favorite science fiction shows, the lighthearted animation show Futurama, whose main character, after being frozen for 1,000 years, wakes up in the year 3000 and has to deal with the fact that not only is he living in a world completely alien to him, but also everyone that he's ever known is dead.
Shout out to Futurama.
Cixin Lu's use of the concept of this helped to illustrate the idea that humans are humans even when coming from a different era. Cixin Lu throughout this series also explores the concept of the long view of history. He explores how certain events and figures throughout human history evolve in the way they are perceived by humanity. Men become gods, gods become devils, heroes become villains, and vice versa. We see this mainly with the characters Luo Ji and Shangxin as their stories progress throughout the centuries, and also the inhabitants of the ships Blue Space and Gravity, who at certain points in history considered to be the enemies of all mankind, and at other points take on near mythic proportions in the mind of some humans, all due to the varying perspectives created by the different vantage points of time. On the whole, humanity seems to possess fleeting short-term memories, and ideas that aren't constantly reinforced instantly fade away in the mist of time. This is the reason that humanity seems to constantly repeat its old mistakes. We as a species simply forget. Some would say that Cixin Lu's trilogy is a quite pessimistic one, and I have to agree to an extent. Cixin Lu does seem to present a pretty pessimistic view of human nature as a whole, though certain individuals can sometimes come up with solutions that could potentially help, the human entity as a whole for some reason resist. It is easy to see the Trisolaran crisis in particular as a metaphor for climate change. Destruction is imminent, perhaps distant but certain, and it's likely that modern humans won't be affected nearly as much as the generations to come after. Can humankind come together to stop this crisis and ensure the survival of its future generations? One of the most interesting parts of the series is when we get to see how the various governments cooperate when it comes to dealing with the crisis in the beginning. At some point, the book mentions that there was a push for socialized technology, which would have given the human race as a whole a greatly increased chance of survival.
That was an interesting one. Socialized technology. I certainly would have... I don't think the story should have had it happen, but I almost wish that it had, so that... Well, I guess maybe I'll look it up and see what I can find on my own about socialized technology, socialized science.
The major world powers flat out rejected this notion because
Boom!
they believed it would weaken them. Not even the sure threat of alien annihilation was enough to force the world to cooperate. The US government said that no form of socialized technology was realistic, that it was a naive idea, and that under the present circumstances, US national security was a priority, second only to planetary defense.
We'll make guns for planetary defense, but, no, we're not giving you our technology. This is America. Come on.
I would say that humankind as a whole is depicted as being rather selfish in this series.
Definitely.
And many times we see how the species cannibalizes itself. Humanity is often its own greatest hindrance. The books are not all pessimism, however. The final book in the series, Death's Sin, does in fact end with certain optimistic undertones by highlighting the endurance of the human race and its spirit. Cixin Lu combines philosophy, science, and pure horror to create what is honestly one of the best science fiction book series I've ever read. The series is
Ooh, high praise. I definitely thought it was very good. I don't know if I would say it's the best I've ever read. It definitely gave me a lot to think about. And it'll be on my mind for a long time.
endlessly bold and unpredictable. Even the spoilers I've mentioned in this video barely begin to get to the place where these books eventually go. The third book, Death's Sin, gets more into the idea of the interdimensionality of the universe, which is endlessly intriguing and quite trippy actually. The series feels
You know what? I'm going to go ahead and explain just a little bit of what the hell you're looking at there. That is four-dimensional space, where you can see not just what you see of someone, but you see all of them. Three-dimensional. So you would see not just me and this nightgown, but underneath the nightgown, and then underneath the skin, and then underneath the muscle, and the skeleton, and the organs, And you can see all of it at once. Trippy. So that's essentially what they're getting a look at there. And that's the four-dimensional space that they find themselves in. So then, think about that. Now, supposedly the universe was originally 10-dimensional in this book. Mind blown.
The series feels boundless in a way that a lot of other books just don't. The questions about humanity, about the universe that are brought up in this series are questions that I've been pondering since I read it a few months ago. The books aren't scary in the traditional sense, but the ideas it explores are chilling to the bone. The Remembrance of Earth's Past is science fiction at its best, and I hope to cover more of the series and explore some of its other concepts in future videos. Thanks so much for watching, guys.
Okay. I certainly enjoyed the video. I enjoyed talking about it. And I'm going to end this broadcast now. But if you want me to talk more about it or watch more videos, comment on them, yeah, let's talk in the comments.